Buzzlings, and welcome back to the Tea with Me podcast, where you spill the tea on absolutely anything. On today's episode, I'm very excited as we are talking about chasing dreams, helping the environment, and NFTs on top of it. To talk about all that, I'm so excited to introduce Audrey Billups to the show. Welcome, Audrey. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here too.
I'm so stoked. Now, a little bit about Audrey. She is a former dancer, environmentalist, a filmmaker, and a lot of other things that she also does. Now, before I give it away too much, Audrey, if you can give us a quick little intro about you on top of the things that I already mentioned.
Yeah, so I'm a Maui-based filmmaker, photographer, dancer, and environmental activist. And do you want me to tell you a little bit about my childhood growing up, or just kind of broad?
Yeah, well, I know that you're in Hawaii now, which is amazing. Everyone loves Hawaii, but you grew up in Texas. Tell us about that. You had a very traditional upbringing, did you not?
Yeah, my dad's a cattle rancher in central South Texas. So I grew up kind of half on the ranch and half in San Antonio. And I did ballet for 15 years. So that was like a big thing in my childhood is, I was either in the ballet studio or at the ranch. And my mom is a photographer, film photographer, and my dad a cattle rancher. So I kind of have that mix of the artist and also the environmentalist or the conservationist.
Yeah. And I know that you were a ballet dancer for quite a long time. That was a big part of your childhood and early adulthood. Now, something did happen for you to change careers. Talk about that, Audrey.
Yeah, so after about 15 years of ballet, I had this kind of continuous injury. My ankles might not be the strongest to be a professional ballet dancer, and I kept on having this injury, and I ended up having to get surgery and getting an extra bone removed out of my foot, and it just kind of took a while to heal from that. And I felt like I was just watching ballet happen before me, and I wasn't being able to participate myself. So I kind of took that as a message to, go on a different track. And I also had been so interested in trying to make a big difference in the world for the environment in some way. And I didn't really see a path at the time to do that through dance. So I had already loved watching documentaries. They changed my life and how I show up in the world so much. So I decided to study documentary filmmaking.
I love it. Now, one question I asked you a little bit earlier, and that is, a lot of people can put all of their eggs in one basket, so to say. Would it be with dancing, such as ballet, which is very intensive and very grueling? I know that you didn't necessarily feel that separation from your future hopes and dreams because you had bigger aspirations, such as the environment and helping others. Tell us how that dream of being a ballerina ended, but then it led you to such a greater purpose, which is filmmaking, and you still even continue to dance with filmmaking.
Yes, I went to university originally for ballet. I was like a ballet major, and kind of the first day they handed me my schedule, and I'm not a person who really likes to have the next 4 years planned out. So when I received that schedule, I was like, you know what, this is really not what I want to do. I'm already injured. I keep on getting injured. And what I really want to do is help the environment. So I walked out of the dance department and right into the film department. And it was honestly a relief to be able to take that step forward. And, it can be difficult to walk away from, like you said, something that you've known your whole life to be. Like I was always the ballet dancer. And to kind of step away from that was a big step. But it opened up so much in my life.
Absolutely. So talk about that. So you went from ballet into film. So your mother, as you mentioned, was a photographer. So I'm sure you had this love for media, but describe really how it went for you to switch into film and finally pursue that part of your passion.
It was really wonderful because for me, film kind of encapsulates so many different art forms, like I think me being a dancer has allowed me to be this certain type of filmmaker because filmmaking is kind of capturing creative movement in different ways. So my musicality, my dance skills, like all of that translates into filmmaking. And film is, it crosses borders. And I can make a film and somebody can see it in South Africa, in Berlin, and anywhere in the world. And if I just dance, unfortunately, unless I film it, it won't be getting to all these places. So it was important for me to be able to feel like a message could be like shown and spread around the world.
I love that. And you're so right. That's film really crosses all borders. And especially now with technology we have. I love it. Now, where does the environmentalism aspect come into play, Audrey? Because you grew up in Texas, you're in Hawaii now. And tell us some of the things that you noticed where it really kind of triggered something with the environmentalism and wanting to help the environment in a greater sense.
So I think for me, definitely growing up having this ranch and this like wild land was a big kind of step for me as being an environmentalist, because I understood from a young age the importance of the wild and this like untouched land, so to speak, and kind of seeing through documentaries and through driving through Texas and all this stuff, how just more and more our earth is getting built up and it's being disrespected. And so my dad actually was born in Hawaii and always talked about it growing up. And so we would go to visit Hawaii, and it was just kind of always in my subconscious of a place that I would love to live one day. And so when I graduated university, I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii and a tent and camera gear I won the creativity award from my university. So they gave me a chunk of money. So that's what I did with the money. And yeah, and I started making films and worked as a filmmaker around the world, usually within the wellness world. Mm-hmm. But then when the pandemic hit and I moved to Maui, I was kind of made myself question, like, what is my art form? I've been making films and photos for all different types of clients. And although I love doing that, what is it that I want to give to the world? What's my art form? And what I kept coming back to was, I just want to dance for the environment. I just want to somehow make a change through dancing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So talk about that leads us perfectly into Oceans Apart. Tell us what Oceans Apart is, how you got inspired to, dance for the environment, and what the movement that it has really led you to.
Yeah, so Oceans Apart is a film that I started about a year ago. And I was kind of running on the beach every morning here in Maui. And one day, the whole beach was covered in these little bits of plastic. And I started picking up the pieces of plastic, and I saw how, beautiful it would look to be a bodice, which is right there right now. And I kind of had that idea maybe in January 2021, but I didn't run with it. Like it was just an idea in my head. I was like, oh, that would be cool. And I kind of went on a spiritual journey and on a trip to the Canary Islands. And I kind of, forced myself, like I said before, to question, like, what is it, my art form? And that idea kind of kept back to me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to run with this idea. And it kind of started out just as a small little spark and has grown into something that I could never have even imagined. But Oceans Apart is an experimental half underwater dance film. I picked up trash for 2 weeks on the beach and created 2 costumes out of them. One here, and the other one is at a commercial fishing line. This one's out of beach plastics. Mm-hmm. And it follows like an epic battle between the plastic spirit and the ocean spirit.
I love that. I love the whole concept. And for people who can't see there, she has the beautiful dress behind her that you handmade from garbage that you found on the beach, which is unbelievable. And to even think of that idea and to put it all together is amazing. Now, Audrey, a lot of people may have similar ideas as to you in terms of, following their passions, there may be other people who want to do things for the environment, such as you, but it can be scary. Now, one thing I didn't add is you were a nomad before the pandemic kind of hit, so you were used to that world. But how did you finally decide to, yes, this is my dream, this is my passion, I know this is what I'm meant to do. How did you finally, cross that threshold? Because that can be very difficult and mentally scary for a lot of people.
I completely agree. And I've had years of resistance. And I think probably the biggest factor was, or one of the biggest factors was actually reading this book that I like highly recommend. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And that book kind of just like it names out resistance, and resistance, he calls it this kind of negative force that's trying to take us away from our art, or take us away from kind of our dharma, our kuleana, as we call it in Hawaii. And the book kind of like helps you take a step forward to pass through resistance. And it kind of like made, when I came back to Maui from the Canary Islands, I had all this fire with me. I was like, I'm going to beat resistance. I'm going to make my art, and I'm not going to let like, and resistance can show up in so many forms. It can be procrastination or thinking you're not good enough. And who am I to do this? It can show up in all different ways. And what I've kind of learned through this process is like, it's not going to happen all at once. And every single day you can take a step forward, whether that's, picking up trash on the beach or just looking up a film of somebody doing something similar. And every little step gets you like on the journey. And it really, another big lesson that I've learned through this, it's really not about a destination. It's not about the final film. The art is the process, or the process is the art.
I love that. That you're so right. And you're so right, because this is a big theme that I talk about on this podcast is, you have to put in the work, and you have to be resilient, and you have to, although the final destination, yes, is great. It's what we always aspire to. It's the journey that matters. And you're so right. Just do the first step. And I've talked to a lot of people who want to do different things, and you'll never really know the steps on how to go about it until you take that first step and continue to get better and better. So I'm so glad that you said that. You're right. You just got to dig deep. It's easier to have an outside kind of motivator, but to dig deep and to find that inside you is so much better, because it really helps in the long run. And I love that you said that. Now, Audrey, talk a little bit more about your film, how the process has been, the reception, and as well how your film led you into the world of blockchain and NFTs.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because when I started this film about a year ago, I barely could tell you what an NFT was. And I thought it would be a 3-month project, and it definitely is not. It's definitely a lot more than a 3-month project. So after creating the first dress, I did the first part of the filming. And during that shoot, I had an underwater photographer come on and take some photos underwater during the shoot. And her name is Kelly Chow, and she's really amazing. See Alchemy on Twitter. And she kind of like brought up, after we did the shoot, she's like, these would be great as NFTs. And so she kind of sat me down, led me through the whole thing. And I was like, this would be a really wonderful way to help fund the film and get the message out there. And so in January, we kind of got together and released a collection of 5 NFTs, and we were able to sell 4, which has really helped me be able to make this film a reality. And yeah, and the NFT life like led me to New York, and I was able to go to NFT NYC, and we had some of our work in 3 different galleries there. And then I also did 3 performances. So that's what, this kind of crypto NFT world like has been able to bring me so much more than I could have imagined when I first started the process. And it's so, it's interesting kind of taking on the role as producer and deciding which ways you want to bring about funding. And I think the NFT route was a definitely interesting way to get the funding, because it's kind of decentralized. It's you're able to share what you're doing to a wider audience who might not be, quote unquote, film private investors.
Yeah. And the photos themselves, I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous. You have sold 4 out of the 5, so you're close to getting your goal, which is amazing. Now, Audrey, could you talk a little bit about maybe the differences between now NFTs and film? They're both a type of media. And people that I find that are in the traditional world of media are often scared of, this NFT blockchain crypto world. Did you have that? And how did you approach melting the two together?
I definitely did have that, because, it's, you think like, why would somebody buy a digital image for all this money? Like, it doesn't make sense. And you don't even get a print. That's what a lot of people say. And Kelly originally talked to me about all of that in September, and it wasn't until January where I was like, okay, I'm on board. Because for me, I realized like there's no harm in trying, and I'm gonna also do the other route. Like I also did apply to grants that I'm waiting to hear back from. I also did find a private investor outside of NFTs, but I also wanted to explore NFTs, and I'm not throwing away everything else, but I'm bringing it on as support and to kind of be able to be in both worlds.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And so you mentioned how you initially wanted the project to be about 3 months or so. Now it's obviously a little bit longer. We just talked about how life is more about the journey rather than destination. How do you approach that? How do you approach, having 4 out of the 5 sold? You're still working on the funding, you're still waiting for grants, and the timelines that you had in your head have not been met. So how do you approach, the busyness still of it, waiting for the last NFT to be sold while still working on everything else? How do you manage self expectations as well as, maintain your mental health?
I would say that that's the hardest part. That's been the hardest part for me because coming from this ballet background, and I tend to be quite the perfectionist, and I feel like I always want it to already be here. It's hard for me to have the patience to push past this, but I think that's been one of the best lessons through it all, is realizing that the best things come through patience. The best things come when you put the work in, when you put your heart into it and soul into it. And I feel like for anybody who's kind of going through that as well, one of my lessons was that if you allow this space and you're not trying to control things so much, that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, kind of steps in and it allows for it to be 10 times greater than you could have ever imagined. Like if the project was just 3 months, I never would have gone to New York and done this performance. I never would have had an event here in Maui. I wouldn't, have been able to get these ambassadors. So I think that, coming back into that solid trust is the biggest part. And I know I'm going to bring this lesson to further projects, but it's also something I have to continually remind myself that everything is in correct timing, and rushing it to what end? Why? I'm all on my own timing. I'm not doing this for somebody else. I'm doing it for myself. So the best thing is to take time to make it what it's supposed to be.
I love that. That is so amazingly said. And I mean, I've kind of mentioned to you before, but I'm huge into astrology. And I think a one part of life is when you start going towards the right direction, it may not be the timeline that you have in your head, but you'll know this the right way because it keeps pushing you towards amazing opportunities. It keeps pushing you more in the same direction. And that's how you know you're going the right way. And I love that you said, when it comes to all of it, is just start, just try to do it. You didn't think you'd be into the world of NFTs, and here you are, 4 out of 5 sold. Amazing. Good for you, Audrey. Really showing that, we, all of us, follow your instincts and continue to push through towards your goals. And, whether or not you achieve them, it's the journey that matters. But Audrey, you've done so many amazing things. Is there anything else that you want to mention about your projects, anywhere they can reach, and drop your handles where people can find you as well, please?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm continuing on. My next step is I'm going to do a dance performance here in Maui. So I'm going to bring in some dancers at the ballet studio I teach at, and we're going to do a beach cleanup and create costumes together and do something in real life here. So that's exciting, kind of the next step before I do the final filming, because as we mentioned before, I have the funding kind of coming in. So in the meantime, I want to continue to bring the project to the community, to the greater community here in Maui.
And where can people find that last 5th NFT to help you complete your project? Where's the link for that? Where can they find it? As a drop the handle.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Audra_the Wild, and then I'm also on Foundation under the same name. And so I have 2 NFTs on there. One is going to be a part of the newer collection that was a part of one of the galleries in New York. So I haven't released the rest of that next collection, but there's 2 NFTs on there that will help fund the film and the project as well. And also 10% of all NFTs are going to a local nonprofit here in Maui that helps pick up ghost netting and plastic from hard to reach beaches. Yeah. And then on Instagram, I'm Audrey_and_the_wild. So it's slightly different. And yeah, my website, audreybillups.com.
Awesome. And I will have to make sure all the links will be in the description. So if you can't find her, if you are a little confused on where to find Audrey, you'll have all the links in the description. Audrey, thank you so much for being a guest on The Tea with B. You have been so amazing, and I'm so looking forward to seeing the film when it's completely finished. Thank you, Audrey.
Oh, I so appreciate it. Thank you for talking with me. And if anybody has any further questions or wants to collaborate in some way, please reach out. I'm always open for it.